When you stop being available, everything begins to change, not just around you, but deep within you. Layer by layer, identity by identity. The self you thought was real begins to dissolve, revealing the core you've long forgotten beneath the noise. Your soul starts whispering louder than the world ever could. You feel it in the pause between messages, in the silence where chaos used to thrive. You sense the great turning, where the external demands shrink and the inner world expands with quiet intensity. The shift is not seen immediately by others, but you feel it first. In your breath, your posture, your hunger for depth over distraction. It's not just peace returning. It's your essence, your wholeness, your sacred solitude finally remembered. We are taught to be available from the moment we are born, to be pleasing, to be useful, to serve, to answer, to meet every call with readiness, to never allow disappointment to follow our name. And so we become addicted to saying yes, trained to believe that love is earned through sacrifice, and that value lies in how quickly we can respond, how much we can give, how well we can bend. The child becomes the pleaser becomes the exhausted adult, and the exhausted adult finally collapses and calls it burnout. But it is not just exhaustion of the body, it is a spiritual depletion, a slow erosion of the self from decades of misplaced loyalty and borrowed identities, from loving too much without being loved enough. You begin to see it, the faces that only smiled when you were useful, the voices that only called when they needed, the hands that reached not to hold, but to take. And for years, you said nothing. You justified, forgave, stayed longer than you should, watered relationships where you were the only one planting seeds. You wore your suffering like armor and called it strength, unaware that real strength is soft, deliberate, discerning. The old version of you kept showing up in places that never saw you, hoping that if you gave just a little more, maybe this time they'd recognize your worth, but they didn't. And the truth is, they weren't supposed to. You were meant to recognize it yourself, alone, in the stillness after everyone leaves. So you stop, not to punish, not to retreat in bitterness, but to realign, to remember, to honor the quiet truth you've carried since childhood, that you are not here to belong everywhere. You are here to belong deeply in one place, within yourself. Your withdrawal is not rejection, it is resurrection. You no longer answer out of guilt, show up out of fear, or say yes out of habit. Instead, you pause, you consider, you choose, because your energy is no longer a public resource. It is a sacred currency, spent only where your soul feels safe. And when people call this change selfish, you smile. Not with spite, but with clarity. They are speaking from the version of you they used to benefit from, not the version of you that now breathes freely. Age teaches you this, not in one lesson, but through 1,000 little deaths. The death of expectations, the death of illusions, the death of needing to be everything to everyone. With time, you stop performing, you stop needing applause to feel valid. You stop trying to convince those who refuse to understand, and you stop running toward doors that were never meant to open for you. The beauty of getting older is that you start to see clearly. You see how much you gave away trying to earn love that was never yours. You see the patterns you kept repeating, the wounds you disguised as personality, and most importantly, you see yourself, not through the eyes of others, but through the lens of truth, ancient and unshakable. When you stop being available, the world doesn't fall apart, it rearranges. The chaos leaves your life not because it's solved, but because it no longer finds a home within you. The manipulations fail, the fake friends vanish, the noise softens, and what remains is honest, raw, and real. The ones who truly see you stay, the ones who never did fade, and you begin to feel something you hadn't felt in years: peace without condition, love without transaction, presence without performance. This is not loneliness, it is deep presence. This is not arrogance, it is self-respect. This is not isolation. It is clarity choosing company that matches your frequency. Now you are no longer exhausted by doing, but fulfilled by being. No longer seduced by praise, but anchored in purpose. No longer distracted by noise, but deeply in tune with silence. The path of self-return is not for the faint of heart. It requires facing your shadows, grieving your former selves, and choosing to be misunderstood by those who only knew the version of you that lived for them. But on the other side of that grief is freedom, untamed, quiet, and invincible. When you stop being available, you stop being a puppet to other people's emotions. You stop being a stage for their projections. And you become instead a mirror, reflecting back only truth, and not everyone can stand the sight of their own reflection. But this is your task now, not to fix, not to heal, not to explain, just to be fully, fearlessly present. Your no becomes a sacred prayer. Your silence becomes a boundary. Your stillness becomes a revolution. And those who deserve your presence will meet you there, not in demand, not in need, but in respect. The world needs less people performing and more people rooted, less noise and more truth, less availability and more authenticity. You are not here to answer every call. You are here to listen to your soul, and when that becomes your compass, everything changes, everything opens, everything flows from within. And now, as you sit with this truth, let it settle in your bones. You owe nothing to a world that only recognized your value when it needed you. You don't need to explain your silence, your stillness, your slowness. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are becoming. Every time you honor your own rhythm, you step into alignment with something far greater than productivity or praise. You step into communion with your true self, the self that doesn't measure worth by performance, the self that doesn't seek to be needed, but to be whole. That self has waited quietly behind every mask you wore, every yes you gave while trembling inside, every moment you betrayed your boundaries just to keep someone else comfortable. That self is rising now, not loudly but fully, in the way a tree grows, rooted, patient, unshakable. Let them misunderstand you. Let them say you've changed. You have. You are no longer living for their narrative. You are writing your own, and this time it's honest. It's sovereign. It's sacred. You are no longer the person who rushes to every fire that isn't yours. You are no longer the one who explains away your absence just to protect someone else's comfort. You are not here to be reachable by everyone. You are here to be reachable by truth, by depth, by what nourishes your soul. When you finally stop being available to what drains you, you create space for what elevates you. And that space, that holy, empty space, is where you begin again. It is where you hear your own voice for the first time in years. It is where peace takes root. It is where you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. That space is not empty. That space is everything.